Hello! Today we're going to be reviewing what we've been learning in class for the past unit. And we will be reviewing narrating writing structures and what do you need to put in your narrating writing stories and structures. Now, something that's very important to remember, we have 3 different writing from. We have realistic, personal, and fantasy. Okay, this is very important. You need at least to pick one of these first before you start your story. Now we will discuss how your story should flow and what you need in your story. Stories that you can pick from, we have realistic, personal, and fantasy. Okay, this is very important. You need at least to pick one of these first before you start your story. Now we will discuss how your story should flow and what you need in your story. The first thing we need in our story is a beginning, or also, as we can call it, the intro of your story. Some things that you need to have in the beginning of all your stories are your characters. So who are your characters, what they look like, how they feel, how old they are, that belongs here. Characters can also be a person or animals. You also need a setting. Settings are the place where your story is taking place. So it could be the house, a car, an amusement park, outer space if you're doing a fantasy story. It's okay. And then you need a time. So a day, the month, the year, the season. Make sure your time makes sense. This is the beginning of our story. There are other things we need. We go to the beginning of the story. What do we need next? Then we have our middle, the line going up. You should recognize what I'm doing here. This is our narrating writing structure diagram that we've used in class. So this right here is the middle. And in the middle, we have our actions. So this is where we see what the character does. What the character says. All this at middle and action leads right up to our problem. The problem is the top of the peak of our middle. So it's where what went wrong, why it went wrong. The middle should explain why this is going to happen. Okay, now we got the problem. What happens next? What went wrong? Why it went wrong? The middle should explain why this is going to happen. Okay, now we got the problem. What happens next? Is our solution. So from the problem, we want to solve it. So our solution going down is how your characters answered the problem. So how they solve it, what they do. When the problem is solved, you end your story. In the ending of your story, I should know what your character's feelings are. Did your character grow? Did your character change the way they think or looks? To get all that ending information, everything should be solved, everything should be resolved. I should have no questions about anything else that happens in the story. Everything should be answered by the time I get books. To get all that ending information, everything should be solved, everything should be resolved. I should have no questions about anything else that happens in the story. Everything should be answered by the time I get to my solution. The ending, everything should be done. Transition words. For the beginning, I should see transition words like to begin, in the beginning, one day, first. Our transition words lets the reader know where they're at in the story. These let them know that they're at the beginning of the story. In the middle, I should see words like next, later that day, suddenly, secondly, also, all of a sudden, then. These are words to let the reader know that they're in the middle of the story, and these are words that should help us also explain how the actions are going. And then finally, we have our ending transition words. We have last, finally, in conclusion, at the in conclusion, at the end. These are some of our transition words that I expect to see in your writing, and you should have in any of your narrative writings.